Welcome to the Chapel of Rest. When it comes to churches, I could a tale unfold whose lightest word would hour up thy soul and freeze thy young blood. But it is a bit too early in the season for freezer burn, so I will tell this tale instead. Nearby, in the unironically named Happy Valley, there is a church with the equally innocent and untainted with the twist of sarcasm church, titled the Chapel of Rest, where another tale awaits us, and it begins with a graveyard. In the year 1897, a Mr. Samuel Patterson decided to deed the plot of land that surrounded his own family's graveyard to the Episcopal Diocese of Western North Carolina, as to help preserve the old graves that were already there. A school and the chapel were built on this land within the year. The chapel caught fire and burned down in 1916. No reason was given why. Perhaps it was an act of God. It was fully reconstructed to the original state. However, the troubles did not end there, and whatever evils were awake in the Chapel of Rest had stirred and did not sleep. Not long after the chapel was reconstructed, the pastor of this sleepy little church had moved in with his lovely and beautiful wife. So lovely and beautiful, however, that she could not contain her loveliness to a single relationship. When her dear husband and pastor discovered her infidelities, his mind broke, along with his heart. Unable to reconcile this deed with himself, his wife, or his God, the pastor took rather drastic action. He went into the small and humble church on a Saturday. The weather was pleasant and the church was quiet. Perhaps he said a little prayer before he began. He climbed up on the front pew. You can still see the scratches on the wood, they say, where his nervous feet, inside hard-soled shoes, scuffed and marked while he tied the rope. Some say you can still see where the rope dug and gouged the wood of the rafter overhead. Fearing perhaps he would strangle to death, the pastor took extra precautions. After he finished tying the noose around his neck, he took out his straight razor and slit his pale, shaking wrists. There are some folks who say you can still see the bloodstains on the floor, still there to this day, with the wood scored and gouged in a vain attempt to clean it up. We can imagine then, after cutting those vital cables, stepping out into open air, and as he swung there, back and forth, thought of his dear, cheating wife. A grim story indeed, my friends, but made darker now by what has followed. Some unforeseen force has determined that this ill deed would not be forgotten. For even with the marks still present in the pew, and in the rafters, and the horrible dark stain on the floor, that did not seem to be enough. For some folks say that if you go to the church at night, you can still sometimes hear the faint creaking of an old rope as it swings with the burden of an invisible weight. And still others say that on rarer occasions, in the quiet darkness of night, you can see his swaying body in the shadows. More frightening still, there are others who insist that when you go there on these nights, and you hear the rope creaking, and you see the spectral blood dripping, and you witness the phantom body of the cursed soul of the pastor swinging, that you can go to the pulpit, and there you will see a strange and ancient registry. And if you were to open it, there you would see inscribed by strange hands on the stranger margins on pages as old as misery, the very hour of your death, and the very place where your soul will shuffle off your mortal coil. Few have seen this strange registry, but one thing is for certain. Those who read what is written there are forever and irrevocably changed. It never pays to know how and when you will die. Just ask the pastor of the Chapel of Rest.